All right, let's get it. We got another YouTube video. So today I want to talk about, there's really two sides, where it's muscle building, fat loss, and honestly, this whole fitness journey. See, there's the external, or what we view as our reality, you got to show up to the gym, you got to eat the same meals. But the part I want to talk about in this video is the other side, the spiritual side, the becoming the best version of yourself, killing your old self, resistant instant gratification, and often more for delayed gratification. Because when you delay gratification, that's where, I mean, honestly, you get the most bang for your buck, but that's what makes you really patient. And that patient, leads to you being detached. So you're actually more likely to get to the outcome. It's just a lot of benefits to it. But if anyone's seen Fairy Tale, if you remember, I think like in the final fight when they're fighting Acting Logia, they split him into two halves, right? Like his actual form and then like this spiritual, like ethereal form. You have to view like the diet part and the fitness part as those two halves. But a lot of people, you're trying to get stronger in the gym or you're trying to lose weight, but you've never once taken the battle to the other realm, the spiritual side. But it's most important that you win that battle because have you ever wondered why someone can, they'll gain the muscle, but then they lose it because they can't get consistent? Or, you actually do lose the weight, but then you gain it back because they didn't do the deep work. They haven't won that inner battle in their head. Because the thing about the diet, all this is you have to, especially with what you eat, like you have to get to a point where you fundamentally change how you view food. But my thing is, this is why it's important, not for forever, but for a good period of time. Like you're gonna have to just only eat like whole healthy foods because you really have to dig deep to fix your relationship, with food. You have to tackle it at the source. That might require you to journal. It might require you just even giving up TV because a lot of people, you'll eat a bunch of goofy shit while watching TV. So you might have to give up the TV so you can kind of realize, oh, like why am I eating those foods? And the way I always recommend and what I did was, if anyone's seen Bleach, remember when Ichigo was trying to learn like Bankai and he didn't have much time, so Urahara had to basically think of a method that like forces the Zanpakuto out. See, if you want to force your other self to come out, or basically think of it like you're going into the other world, the invisible world. You're trying to get over there so you can kind of deal with these problems that you have. The quickest way to force that out is you have to anything that gives you any sense of instant gratification, you got to shut out for a couple of months. And this is why SR is so important too. SR is going to be the easiest way. But there's like a few versions of SR. Like you have the base version, but then you have I call it true retention where like no instant nothing, like no instant gratification, no alcohol, no porn, no, you can't smoke, can't do any of those things. And you have to do that for a period of time. And honestly, it's not as long as people think, but it depends on, how cooked you are in that other world, we'll call it. But that's the only way that you're gonna the way I describe it is you basically you manifest yourself in that other world, but the way I would explain it is you become an actual observer of your reality when you actually like start to see the things around you. But that requires like you got to take your health seriously. You got to vibrate at a certain frequency to be able to start doing that. Because when you do that, when people tell you things, you'll be a lot more objective of yourself too, which is good. But it does take some work, and there's still a lot of parts that you have to catch up on. Because I'm not by no means perfect, especially after today. I recognize that, but um, you have to definitely you have to give up some pleasures temporarily for a good while if you want to get to that next level, or just really fix, the relationship you have with the food, with the gym, and with all these things too. The Buddha always talks about our attachment to things is the root of all suffering. So you have to detach innately from everything. But this is why I really see the importance of getting lean, because one of the hardest ways to really master yourself, I would argue, because food is definitely a vice for quite literally billions of people, and that is reflected in diabetes numbers and all these other abnormal health statistics. So when you think of it like that, yeah, you have to really lock in and take this stuff serious, because if you don't, you can't get to that other side. But I'm starting to recognize now the other side, there are costs to the other side, and some you might not be ready for until it's a little too late, or maybe you can still fix it, but you have to just start doing and going through these things, and then you have these conversations or whatever. If anyone's curious about the glasses, well, I don't know if anyone actually like watches this, but I have these red light glasses on. I highly recommend. A couple of hours before bed, put these on to help. I'm recording a little later than usual, so I just threw these on. But yeah, I think it's really important, especially now for myself too, because as your SR streak gets longer, you start keeping commitments to yourself. You're gonna start to see new parts of yourself that you weren't aware of before. Sometimes it's gonna take the intervention of other people or just them talking to you, but it could be among other factors. You might just come to it yourself, but when these things do occur, you're basically already equipped with every way to handle it, because you've become a pretty good observer of your reality. And the biggest thing, and this a lot of people, they're just not gonna get it. And I'll always stress it by saying that the gym, get lean is law. It's not about getting the six pack abs. It's not really about building muscle. It's really a spiritual journey disguised as a physical one. But it's mainly about delayed gratification. Because when you delay gratification, it makes you very patient. It makes you detach from outcomes. And anyone that knows anything about spirituality, like when you detach, that's when you're okay without the thing like it actually comes to you, because you're okay without it. Because if it's already here, then you wouldn't be desperate for it. If you already have the partner, you wouldn't be desperate, you wouldn't be eager. You would detach for it because, like, yeah, like they're already there. And as I continue to do this more and more, you kind of detach more and more from the outcome, because you're doing all the correct things. But it's really, I wouldn't even say that. The way I describe it is, it's really the identity shift. Like, oh, like I'm the leanest version of myself, or I'm in shape, or it's not even not being lean. It's just like I'm the best version of myself. I keep commitments to myself. Once you get the identity shift, because you have enough evidence, through SR or whatever you're doing, that yeah, you can keep commitments to yourself. You can do very difficult things. That's gonna make you move and operate a certain way, you know, and it makes you just aware of everything around you. And that's why the self improvement path. It's everyone innately you're on it whether you recognize it or not. It's just when you start to walk it, genuinely walk it. This is where I talk about the consequences. You might not align with certain people. You got to figure out this new identity. I could say something. I talked with a good friend about today. Is it's almost as if it might seem like you're trying to help someone, but it might come off as you think they're better than them. And it didn't click till I had actually two people kind of say like, yeah, that's what it kind of seems like. I was like, oh, okay. And that's what you kind of recognize. Yeah, ultimately, you can't change someone else. Like the standards you might have for someone are not their standards. So you can't really attack them for that, because it's gonna be not on your timeline. It's on their timeline. But these are things, you have to go through on the self improvement journey. You have to go through it. You recognize it, and then once you recognize it, like boom, you work and evolve around it. But that's why ultimately it is self improvement. You just have to ultimately focus on you first and foremost. 'Cause I can definitely say myself now. It's just it's just me. I'm gonna just do my thing. If anyone genuinely wants to help, they'll reach out and they'll ask. But I won't. I'm not gonna harp about it. But these are just things you recognize, like as you really start to walk this path. Like I say, for me, it's definitely uncharted territory. This is the longest I've gone without having, a cheat meal, no goofy shit, just eating the same clean meals. It's the longest I've gone being consistent with workouts, my step goals, all these things. So we're entering into uncharted territory. So that new identity, but we're getting closer and closer to the new self identity. But I say all that to say, but you might get lost a little while because at a certain point I got so you're just like, oh, you're doing all the right things, you're locked in, you're doing everything out. But that's also why, some people drifted apart. I didn't even recognize it until recently. And this is where it's context and it depends on the person because certain people are gonna drift apart because they're just not a good influence for you. But there's gonna be people in your circle that are probably good people and those are the ones you don't want to lose. So it makes you reflect on that also. But the journey is just really interesting because it's just a lot of things that just didn't expect to happen. They're all good because innately nothing is neither good or bad because it just depends on the present because the breakup might be bad in the moment but it ends up being a blessing because you find your actual partner. So innately nothing is good or bad. And this is where I'm like the context matters, but you just being present because if you're genuinely present, you get to a point where nothing is innately bad because anything bad is temporary. It's temporary because good will eventually occur from it. Even if it seems really fucked up in the moment, but you also recognize, like you assign good or bad to essentially everything. But that's why having a positive mindset is so powerful because you can go through a relationship situation and still find the good with it. And as you get more aligned, you'll find that too. Like you'll really see the good in everything because it just depends on how you want to interpret your own reality. You can interpret everything bad, or you can interpret everything good. It just depends on how you want to see it. But for you to gain, let's call these powers, but it's almost as if let me think. What's a good anime example? I don't know, but it's essentially just recognizing like powers and abilities like that you've never been separate from. You've always had. You're just becoming aware that you've had the power. The ability to sense things, feel. It's all innately tied to us, but you might go through certain things. See, for me, like it's like for years, like the spiritual emotional part of me was just dead. So I only operated in a 3D world. But it's almost impossible. No, it literally is impossible to grow like that. And then so things have started to happen to me. I met some people, good friends, and just being around them kind of helped me start to quietly awaken the third eye. Because once you awaken that, you start to view everything a lot differently. You can see things in people, all this stuff. Very real. Not to go down that rabbit hole, but I wouldn't even call it a rabbit hole. It's just something you have to awaken to. But the reason the gym is so powerful because the gym is probably the biggest gateway. The gym, among some friends and just going through stuff, has led me to this point. But it definitely all started from the gym. Picking up those 10-pound dumbbells and shoulder pressing them. That innately put all this in motion from that singular action. Because what you don't recognize is when you do that first workout, it's not really it really wasn't about moving the weight that way. It was just you saying, like, I'm ready to start. and you see how far you can take it. Because you're gonna go through so many changes throughout your lifting journey. But what will be constant is the gym. Like you're always gonna be pushing some dumbbells, moving the bar. But how you change, like in relation to like the weights get going up or your appearance changing, it's just a lot of that makes it innately spiritual because it shows you if you commit to something for a long period of time, you'll get boop desired outcome or whatever. It makes you really patient, but it also makes you confident because you're doing something that not many people are doing. And I know a lot of us watching this, we've had confidence issues, with chicks or whatever. But the way you're going to get around that is you just have to do very difficult things because when you start doing more difficult things like talking to people, they get a lot easier because hang on, I've done stuff way harder, It's a lot easier to talk to someone when you've gone months starving yourself, cutting down, or you spent years lifting really heavy, waking up early to work out, going to bed early. When you spend years doing all these things, all these other things, all your other fears, you're like, oh, hang on, that's not so difficult. I've done much more difficult things. Like this is fine. Like this is normal. That's how you start to think, and that's how you start to operate. But I will say one of the biggest shocking points of the whole self-improvement journey is just you really start to see everything around you as is. And this is not stuff to get used to, but when you look around and just see how cooked everyone is, maybe this is something I have to work on too, but it's not to say you're better than them. It's just more so you recognize like everything around this is just instant gratification. But innately you need delayed gratification to get to the points that you want to get to. But this is why it's so difficult. You have to, because I feel like for the longest I've also undermined the whole health and gym journey. You think like, oh, it's not that crazy. I just work out, but you don't want to discredit the work that you're putting in because it's going to prevent you from seeing everything else around you also correctly. Because when we say like the average person is cooked or like you look outside and everyone's fat, it's not to attack them. That's quite literally how it is. So when you recognize that, you're just like, holy shit. Oh, there's a fly in my sorry. But when you view things as they are, it makes you, oh, okay. Or, someone's like, oh, I can't lose the weight. But you look at them, like they're lying. It's just these are the things that you start to become like really aware of. Because, ultimately reality doesn't really care what you think. It just operates as it is. If you eat a lot of food, eat a lot of calories, it's gonna get stored as fat because your muscle glycogen and stuff's already full. And all these things. The science can explain it, but ultimately, if you eat a lot of food, you're gonna be fat. But see, when you don't track, and this is why tracking is important too. And highly, highly recommend you read Atomic Habits because it talks about that too, like tracking your habits so you can, improve. That's why tracking lifts is so important in the gym, but tracking food is so important too because all it takes is 1 week of tracking. And then the gears will start to change because you're going to recognize like, damn, I was eating so much food. Like, holy shit. And you're going to be like, damn, okay, let me chill out a little bit with the food. But yeah, I mean, ultimately it's just, innately with this journey, this health journey, there's two sides. Your physical, of course, but then your spiritual side. But you got to focus. The most important battle is the spiritual side because remember, inner reflects the outer. So you have to deal with the problems in the other world. You got to fight. If you got to fight your shadow self or acknowledge your shadow self, but you got to work on the identity shift, for these habits or even for, your true self to emerge. Yeah, guys, that's it. Another video. Stay locked in. Defeat yourself. And until the next one.